Crime, classrooms, and the cost of living. Communication matters, and it matters a lot. So how are Democrats and Republicans messaging to an anxious public? Joining me now is a new friend, and I'm so excited to introduce her to all of you. She's the founder of Podium Strategies. She's a former chief of staff and advisor to the Biden White House press office, which we didn't have a chief of staff. I probably could have used one in the press office. It's Yemisi Egbewole. Am I saying that correctly?
That's 100%
Because every time I
correct.
see the name, I'm like, I want to make sure I get this right. This is Perino on Politics. It's where I call up my smart friends and find out what's on their minds about the state of American politics. And I was excited to introduce you to her because she's been coming on Fox News. Newsroom in particular is where I've seen her most. And I love her takes. I love her independent streak. Your thoughtfulness. When I look on screen, I can't take my eyes away. There's a beautiful woman in front of us and so intelligent, so smart, and a great asset to all of us here and a new friend as well. So welcome.
Oh my gosh, thank you. What a welcome. This is incredible. Having worked in the White House press office to sit across from a former press secretary and having followed you for so long, this is amazing.
Wait, so what year did you graduate high school?
I graduated in 2009.
Wow. So I was press secretary while you were in high school.
Yeah, and that was like, I was really big into, classic debate kid.
Oh, you were in debate?
I did
love
debate.
speech and
I
debate.
did speech and debate, coached it when I finished college and in grad school too. And so I was just a big political nerd.
Do you get asked to judge speech tournaments
I do,
now?
yeah.
Do you
George
ever have time to do
Mason,
that?
UT
Yeah.
Austin. Every once in a while I try to do it. I do it for a lot of the HBCUs too.
Yes.
So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So wait, tell everybody where you grew up, a little bit of background.
Yeah, so I am a naturalized citizen. My father's Nigerian, my mother's Jamaican. We came to the States a month before 9/11. We moved to Georgia, suburbs of Georgia. And I learned a lot of, people always talk about how I don't have a specific regional accent. Well, I learned a lot of speaking like American English from watching State of the Union addresses. So really got into politics.
Your parents making you watch them?
No, I just got so into American history, especially because my dad was taking the citizenship test at the same time I was in U.S. civics. And so we were kind of learning alongside each other, and it was a lot of fun.
And your dad is a pastor?
My dad is a pastor, yes. Got his doctorate in theology, and I always say he really is the person who studies like the mind and the heart so much. And he's taught me so much about empathy and hard work. And we just had a really good community. I loved growing up, and I'm so glad my parents moved here.
I have a young friend who was taking the citizenship test, and I was making so many jokes with him. Like I would say, "Oh my gosh," I almost fell one day, and he goes, "Oh wow," and I said, "Yeah, that would have been bad." Like when President Ford fell down the stairs of the plane, and he said, What? I said, wait, you don't know about that? It's definitely going to be on your citizenship test. It's like, are you serious? But obviously that was a joke. But the citizenship test, it's no joke.
It's very hard. Yeah, you have to really want it in order to kind of
As
pass
it should
that.
be,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I mean, it's so, I think my dad also had a tutor at the time too. And so I was like, wow, this is incredible.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Amazing. So then in a short way, what's your trajectory from college debate to White House?
So I was living in Pennsylvania, 2016, Hillary campaign happening at that time. I was working in state politics, really, Pennsylvania. And I got connected with some folks who were DC people, but in Pennsylvania. And I was like, oh, well, you know, I didn't know people worked in DC. I didn't know you interned and things like that. And especially having immigrant parents, there's such a learning curve with how you integrate in politics. So I was told that there was a position open in Senator Mark Warner's office to be a staff assistant, which is basically answering the phones.
Yeah.
It is
You don't even
not-
answer the questions. You only answer the phone.
You only answer the phones. And I had 2 degrees. I just finished a master's in public policy. And I told my parents, I'm going to apply for this job. And if I get it, I'm going to move to DC and I'm going to answer phones and manage interns. And that's about it. And my parents were like, okay, this is not what we came here for.
Right. So did they not want you to go into politics?
They did not. No. Right. I mean, my brother is an OBGYN. And so it was very kind of like, well, there's like the medical field. And I was like, oh, I don't do blood. So so let's do blood theoretically on the floor. So I got the job. I moved in a week. I slept on a friend's couch for a couple months.
Yep.
I figured it out. It's so interesting now hearing the talks about paying interns, increasing the pay for junior staffers, because I really kind of came in like $31,000.
No, me too.
I think.
I made I think $18,000 when I first started in 1995, and I did figure out. But this is what I recommend: everybody should do 2 years on Capitol Hill, and it's the best internship. Even if not that you're interning for 2 years, but it's like getting a master's degree in life in a way. And even if you don't want to work in politics, the people that you'll meet, the things that you'll learn, will be invaluable for the rest of your life.
100%, especially if you know how to maintain a network and not treat relationships transactionally. I did Mark Warner's office, worked for the senator for 3 years. He's such a great person to work for when you're coming in the Hill. He's just steady, really great bipartisan leader. And then I jumped to Senator Amy Klobuchar's office. And so I did tech and telecom policy for both of them. I worked on the legislative side, and they were building out the team for Biden's office, for the legislative affairs office. And it's hard to explain to people, but these White House jobs are not posted online anywhere.
No.
You don't just get to see it and apply. You really, truly have to know people.
Yeah, there's nothing like networking on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
And so you were in Leg Affairs, and then you go to the press office at...
Leg Affairs for 2 years, and then the last 2 years of the Biden admin, kind of at that point where you're like,
should I stay or go?
100%. I think in an effort to kind of keep and retain a lot of the people who knew internally how the place worked. Anita Dunn, who was trying to navigate some ships as Karine Jean-Pierre was taking over, was building out the staff, and I came over.
So that is her background, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the news of the day. I mean, you live in Washington, D.C., and you wrote a piece for Fox Opinion last week about Trump's push on D.C. crime, in the takeover. I think I guess it is a takeover, but to me it's a temporary thing in order to give the officials in D.C. the space that it needs in order to get a handle on crime. There have been some Democrats who are saying there's no crime, there's no problem here. That's not your position. How would you describe it to people, how you see it?
I would tell people that two things can exist. You can see a reduction in crime, and you can still believe that there is crime in the city. And what we're seeing here is an overcorrection. People, in an effort to delegitimize what the president is seeing and doing, are just saying there is no crime. Well, that's simply not true. That's not true for any metropolitan area. It's just, a concentration of people, you're going to have a concentration of crime. That's the way that it works. And DC for a very long time has avoided the problem. And we've relied on our national monuments, National Mall, everything is so pretty. But if you live in DC, in these actual neighborhoods, you're experiencing crime. It's a concern of yours every single day. I think anybody who tells me that they are not concerned about crime in D.C. is not living in D.C. And I think Senator Schumer said something just last week where he said, I wake up, the sun is rising, I go for a walk by the monuments. First of all, nobody does that. And also, he lives in
security.
He has security. He lives in a part of Capitol Hill, too, that, frankly, I wouldn't be as concerned about. I live in a very foot traffic heavy area, and I've gotten to know a lot of my neighbors in the community, and there are parents especially that are worried for their kids. And so I think that if we don't address the problem, people start to lose trust in us.
So one of the issues that you wrote about too is there's a youth crime problem. And Judge Jeanine talked also about youth victims. And that 75% of the cases of these youth victims of 45 kids who have been murdered in the last 2 years, they're unsolved. There's no leads. Nobody's doing anything about it. And I think that's something that when you wrote about this, I thought, it'd be good to have you on the show just to help explain how somebody who lives there feels about it. And especially on the youth front.
Yeah, and a lot of this really is the ineptitude of local leadership. Mayor Muriel Bowser has not enacted some programs that existed pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, if children skipped school or if there was chronic absentee, there would be a van that'd go around, right? You knock on the door, you check in, you tell the parents, look, if you don't bring your kid into school, we're going to have to bring in Child Protective Services. There was a process to make sure that kids remained in schools and families were held accountable. Well, of course, COVID happens. We shut down everything. Kids are working remotely. You don't have to do that. But then we bring kids back and we don't put in place the same systems and guardrails that we had before. So what I see is really local electeds dropping the ball, and now they're upset that someone's picking it back up again.
The truancy level is incredible.
Unheard of. I mean, and if it's 2:00 on a Tuesday during the fall, you see groups of kids outside. That is not acceptable. Those kids should be in school. And the fact that we were dealing with this and we were seeing it every day and nobody was actually doing anything to address it is, really uncalled for. So I think the city council and the mayor have lost the trust of the people, but especially the parents.
Do you think that the K through 12 education issue, because I think that is also there's the family issue, there's education, there's the truancy, there's the crime, all of this is in the cauldron.
Yeah.
But on the K through 12 front, for me, this is not, I don't know the DC statistic, but the Baltimore statistics of the past 2 years have been horrendous. If nobody in 8th grade can do math at the grade level, in the entire school district, there's huge problems.
Yeah.
And I am a proponent of school choice, but I don't think it's the only answer to all of this.
I do think that if you're able to provide that access for your kids, you should have every ability to do so. If you work hard and you're able to provide for my parents put me in a private Christian school growing up in Georgia because they were able to do that, and that should be their complete choice. The public education system in DC in some areas is absolutely a joke. I'm not even sure.
I know.
For some of these kids, they might not even be showing up because they might think to themselves, well, when I do show up, who is there to help me?
Well, that's the other thing is that we were talking about absenteeism for students. I understand also that the teacher absenteeism is huge as well. Like they don't show up.
And totally protected by the unions too. So
what do you think about that on the union front? Is there, I always think that there could be a Democrat who says enough and bucks the system a little bit on the union front. This hasn't happened yet.
I look at cities like Chicago and I think, wow, if ever there was a city that was completely in the chokehold of the union, it feels like the teachers union kind of runs that city because they're able to shut everything down, because if the teachers don't show up, what are you going to do as a parent? You really need them to be there, if anything, so that you can leave and go to work.
Right.
So it almost feels a bit like a mafia mentality sometimes. And like, do teachers work hard? Yes, they do. Do they need to be paid? Yes, they do. And also, does there need to be some balance and give and take? 100%.
Yeah, Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas really increased teacher salaries in Arkansas as a way to say, we value you, we trust you. And some of those southern states have been turning things around, Mississippi, Alabama, on the education front, because they had local leaders who said, we don't want to be 49th in the states.
Yeah.
49th in the rankings. Nobody does. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is affordability. And that has a lot of different layers, right? And let's zoom out a little bit from DC and talk about affordability overall. I feel that I'm reading a lot more about it. In fact, the Wall Street Journal today, we're talking on Monday, August 18th, a big feature about what it's really like to try to raise a large family, on a middle-class salary. And for younger people, as you are a younger person, this issue of affordability is so interesting to me. I look at the New York City's mayor's race. Mamdani, we call him Democratic Socialist, I guess what he calls himself. President Trump calls him a communist. But regardless, he was talking about the issue. He was talking about affordability. And none of the other candidates are really doing that. And that's a missed opportunity. And it's not just here in New York or in Washington, D.C. This is across the country. How should I be thinking about that? Or how do you think about it?
I think about it in the idea that we have, as a party, as the Democratic Party, relied so much on ideology and used values as our politics first model. And a lot of younger people are coming in and they're saying, let's talk about the economy first. We can deal with ideology. We can deal with the intersection of race and gender and all of those things that you tell me I'm supposed to be concerned about. But I can't be concerned about those things if I do not have a roof over my head, if I don't know where my next meal is coming from, if I can't afford childcare. I mean, we have to think about the monthlies and less of what is this big idea picture of America. And I think a lot of young people are asking their respective parties to come down to the basics, right? I have monthly bills that come up. I have big semi-annual, annual bills. And even if inflation cools, I am still feeling the pressure of this every month or quarter. And you are telling me that democracy is at stake. You are telling me that how I live, everything we fought for is at stake. I'm just trying to live today and tomorrow. And I can't care about these big picture ideas like climate change and green energy and building housing when I can't even afford a house. And I can't care about these pro-worker issues when I can't even find a job. And you're demonizing these industries. Well, they're the industries that are trying to employ me. And I think a lot of young people want the Democratic Party to find a balance. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be and. We can be pro-worker and care about the industries that employ workers. Yeah. You can be pro-green energy and care about building housing. Inventory is tight right now.
So there are two guys, Derek Thompson and Ezra Klein, and they're Democrats, and they wrote a book called Abundance. And
I've heard of it.
I think you read it. Yeah. I have to tell you, I couldn't bear to read it. It was I read so much about the book.
Yeah.
And I listened to this podcast that they did with each other explaining the book that I didn't read the whole book because it's quite long. But their idea, it's along those lines that the Democrats should be, we are the party of opportunity and abundance. What did you think of the book?
I think they're quite verbose. Yes. I also, when I read the book, I thought, okay, I like these ideas, but I have seen governors at the Democratic level espouse these values and ideas already and put them into operation. Maybe we need to get better at marketing in a sense and advertising what we do every day. But to me, it wasn't anything new, but I'm glad there's a name for it that some people seem to be running on. I mean, Gavin Newsom is talking about abundance now. Ezra and Derek Thompson they've spoken at like different Democratic retreats. And so it's good that different leaders are seeing them. But to me, it wasn't anything new. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, Ezra Klein, he grew a beard. He got, he's doing a whole rebrand. Good for him.
Things that we can't do. Yes. The issues of affordability beyond inflation, I think it is a really big issue. I heard a statistic this weekend that 40% of the houses in America are owned by 20% of the people. Oof. Yeah. So there's an inventory problem. And I think maybe President Trump has a point on interest rates. I mean, maybe that can help a little bit, but growth overall can help. I don't have to tell you, you know this, Democrats' polling numbers are really low. Mm-hmm. Does that give you angst? Do you think that they'll improve? Where do you see things?
I think that the numbers are always going to be low for Democrats because the party is just so stretched. I think Republicans operate under the moniker of, okay, we've got this one person, this is what they're saying. All right, we're going to follow this. Democrats right now are in such an identity crisis spiral, which I am actually pro for. Like, I think that we need to completely rebuild the whole entire model. I mean, 2015, 2016, we're having all these discussions about where will the Republican Party go? And nobody had a thought about Trump in their minds, really. And now he really is somebody that's put forth new players. I mean, the political people that existed on the Republican side in 2016 aren't even kind of at the same influence level. And I would like the same for the Democratic Party. I think that we have existed in an Obama era and an Obama light era for a very, very, very long time.
And he's not coming to save you.
He is not coming back. And frankly, a lot of what was built, right, Obama was the hope and change. We're just past that, and we're not at that point anymore. And so I think that it's great that we are at the bottom, because at the bottom, you really only go up from there. And maybe being at the bottom teaches a lot of people who have always existed at the top of the party that they are not the way.
What do you think about all of the recent cursing and the fight thing? Like Eric Swallwell today saying that we're not... He rejects Michelle Obama's when they go low, we go high. And he said, we're going to bury them under the Capitol. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Okay. Does when they go low, we go high keep me up at night sometimes? Yes, 100%. 100%. Do I think Eric Swalwell is operating in a mode of authenticity? No. And I want to talk about the thing he did when everybody broke for recess and he was like going on swims and he was like, I'm swimming right now, but you know what I should be doing? Working at the Capitol. And I thought, well, you can do that. You can also do town halls. You can also meet with small businesses in your district. And when you do that, you give this idea that Democrats go home and they just don't do anything until Mike Johnson calls them back.
Right.
That's not how we operate. Everybody is doing their jobs. You can too. Quit with the videos and the silly shticks. It's just, what is authentic here?
Do you think Jasmine Crockett is authentic? Because I kind of get a kick out of her.
I think she's authentic, and I think that's part of the heartburn for a lot of Democratic leadership. But look, she raises a ton of money. She raised like, I think, $3.8 million.
Do you think that's a problem, though, that they raise so much money when they're out on their own and not being like cohesive? I think about that with like the individual, even it happens on the Republican side too, where you have somebody who will always throw a lot of grenades and it gets them personally a lot of financial contributions, but not necessarily for the party.
It is interesting whenever she has kind of like a back and forth with Marjorie Taylor Greene, because they're kind of like two sides of the same coin a little bit, and they kind of market themselves off of like this firebrand exchange that they've had together. The thing about fire is that it works for your district, but what's going to happen nationally? And I think this conversation about who are we as a party has to exist for everyone, because 2028 does have a major effect on each person.
What do you think about the mayor's race? I hate that word, mayoral. How do you, mayoral, I don't know. I need your diction to say mayoral. I hate that word. Anyway, for the mayor's race here in New York, and you have Zohran Mamdani, who's kind of the darling of the moment. You have an off-year election here in New York, so he is getting a lot of attention. Is that of concern to you, or is it just part of the story that we have right now?
It's not a concern to me, because Democrats put all their money and influence and power into the Cuomo bucket, and that was their mistake. And they have to live with whatever they've chosen. They chose a man who did not apologize for what he did, who's not admitted to
on the
sexual harassment front, and who is not admitted to the cover up he did with the seniors at the nursing home over COVID. He left, he came back, and he had the audacity to think we would forget and forgive. And the people of New York City didn't. And so I think it's an indictment on the New York City elite. And they have to live with who kind of came in and who was able to speak to the people. So, Governor...
What did you think, though, that a lot of his support did come from the liberal, affluent whites and not the working class of New York City, at least in the primary?
Right. And I think at the end of the day, for this kind of deep blue city, everybody's going to coalesce around him. At the it almost kind of feels like everybody's having these conversations about like, oh, will Cuomo or Adams or being independent, and I'm just like, Adams for one. I don't understand how in a city that is so blue, where you could have a really strong, mature Democratic bench, we end up with these like characters like De Blasio.
Well, do you think it's because nobody wants to run for office?
I think being a mayor is a hard job. Nobody wants to do that part.
That's the hardest job.
It's so hard.
My Aunt Patty Sue was the mayor of Rawlins, Wyoming for several years. And you are the closest to the people. Like, you are seeing your constituents at the grocery store.
Yeah. And as much as I give our DC mayor, Muriel Bowser, a lot of crap, I understand that it is hard to govern.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is. Okay. So then let me ask you about another version of or another side of the Democratic spectrum, and that is conservative Democrats. And there's somebody who's getting a lot of attention all of a sudden. He used to sort of be the enemy of the conservative media, and now everyone's like, wow, Rahm Emanuel is kind of great. And he worked for Bill Clinton, and he was a congressman. He was a mayor of Chicago. When I was in the press office, when I got named press secretary, do you know the first person who called me was Rahm Emanuel?
Very sweet guy.
And he called and said, you're going to do great. I was there when Dee Dee Myers was press secretary. There hadn't been a woman press secretary from then. And I was like, wow, that was so nice. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he would be a good leader for the Democrats. And the reason I bring this up with you is I just had one of his quotes, and you were on Newsroom, and I just thought, wow, your independent thinking on him was very good for me to hear. Like, I needed my bubble to be popped about how Democrats might think about Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah, I think Rahm is going to have a hard time if we are moving past the Obama era of politics. It is very hard to market yourself as an outsider and anti-establishment when you built the house that we're now living in. And listen, we all have the memories of Goldfish now because of the internet, but a lot of us who operate and work in D.C. still remember Rahm Emanuel and a lot of the Obama team. I mean, I think the Pod Save America boys, that whole genre of politics is going to have a hard time convincing people that they still know how to help us govern. And I think there's so many, look, everybody can be in the field. Let's have a crowded field. Let's actually get choice here and get to pick. But there are a lot of great governors who are going to be able to say, look at what I've done here. I'm incredibly popular across the aisle. Can Rahm say that? I don't even know if Democrats in Chicago would come out and support him.
Do you think it's a governor would be your best bet for 2028?
I would love a governor for 2028. And at this point, I do think, now I caution that because, maybe the person who ends up being it, we're not even talking about right now.
Possibly, yeah.
But governors, senators have been given such a platform in the past few elections, and they're always the first people looked at. But I think we can get back to looking at governors as the people. I mean, they essentially have to do the work on the ground all the time. And a lot of our governors are really strong right now. I mean, Wes Moore, Shapiro, Andy Beshear.
Andy Beshear of Kentucky.
Andy Beshear of Kentucky.
Because Kentucky and Pennsylvania and now Michigan are red states going into 2028. And they are blue state governors. I'm sorry. They are Democratic governors in a red state.
Yes.
That's an interesting place to be.
And in our current climate and politics, that's an incredibly hard thing to do. And to maintain favorability ratings as they have, incredibly hard. Governor Whitmer is going to have a hard time for a Democratic Party that has tried to put a woman forward a couple of times now and has just not panned out. And so you're also pushing against that.
What do you think about her cooperation of a sort with Trump?
I think fantastic that she's able to work with the administration. She really has to, having a state like Michigan. She really has no choice. But also, if you're going to do it, own it fully. Like the moment in the Oval where she kind of put the folder in front of her face, we didn't need that. You're already there.
Right.
And
smile.
And you can never predict what the president is going to say. You should know that by now. So when you're in there and he's saying something that you might not agree with, smile.
Would you work on a campaign in 2028?
I don't know if I would work on a campaign in the sense of maybe I'm moving to Iowa or South Carolina and sleeping on the floor of places. I think right out of college, that was like my time and my moment. In my 30s, I'm not so sure now, but there are a lot of really, really great young people that are excited. I talk to folks every day who are just like, wow, this is the first time.
And do you feel like they want to put the Biden years behind them?
100%.
And when the switcheroo was made from Biden to Kamala Harris, what was that like for you?
It was the day that he declared that he was dropping out of the race. I mean, was like shockwaves. And
you didn't think it was happening?
None of us thought it was happening. I mean, they had just had Jen O'Malley Dillon, JOD, for those who don't know, huge campaign strategist for a very long time. They had just had her on TV like the day before.
And I couldn't believe it because I knew on the night of the debate, I started taking notes. And at 9:12, I put my pen down. I never took another note. I was like, oh, this is over. He's going to have to drop out.
Oh, yeah. We all had dinner together as a press office before the debate. And then everybody went to their respective
office to watch.
Yeah. Like, and I was at a friend's house and we had a glass of Chardonnay and we were going to sit and watch. And it's 2 seconds in, I put my glass down and I was just like, wow, what's happening here?
And was it a surprise to you?
The debate performance?
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. 100%. I mean, all of leadership was kind of like, guys, this is going to be good. Like everybody told us this was going to be great.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't. And it was very surprising. And then going back into the office after it, nobody like talked about it in a way of like,
it's one of those things like let's not talk about it.
Jeff Zients was our chief of staff at the time, and he was we were waiting, maybe he would do like a call or something like that. Nothing. Everybody was just like, all right, let's get back to work. And I think that's where they lost a lot of young folks, because here we had dedicated so much of our lives to this. I had been, I was like 4 years into this, and it kind of was like, no, you have to talk about this. The entire world, not just the nation, the entire world is talking about this. And mind you, a lot of us are getting texts from family, friends, colleagues, people I hadn't heard from in years were reaching out to me. And it kind of was just like, you owe this to us. Yeah. You owe this to America, but you especially owe this to us right now.
Kamala Harris gets named. Yes. And where were you on that? Good idea or the only idea that's available?
The only idea that's available. Quick fix. Let's get it done.
And do you think it's a good decision for her to decide not to run again? Well, not to run for governor of California.
I think it was a surprising decision because to me, I thought, she's the shoo-in.
But I think that she knew that she wouldn't be the shoo-in because all the other Democrats weren't getting out of the primary.
Right. For the governor's race, I know like Katie Porter, Becerra's, and I don't know like the popularity among those folks. Katie Porter, when she was in Congress, wasn't that popular.
California is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she doesn't run for the governorship, and now I think everybody's asking ourselves, well, what do you run for? Are you running for something?
I don't think this is my personal opinion, is she never runs for anything again. Elected office. That's my personal opinion.
Okay.
If she does, I'll be happy to. I'll eat crow right here on the podcast. This is just a short segment where I like to ask all my smart friends, what do you pay attention to that might not be on my radar?
I want to pay attention to the way that we're going to shift messaging to young folks. I especially want to pay attention to the way that we shift that messaging.
You mean Democrats?
Yes, to Democrats, young Democrats, but especially the younger subsection of Democrats that fall within minority voters. For a very long time, and this is a conversation happening with young Democrats across just the Southeast, for a very long time, Democrats come to the South, and where do they go? They do a commemorative walk on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They go to Ebenezer Baptist Church, where MLK was the pastor, and they give the same speech again and again. And I want Democrats to start thinking about who's in that congregation, because that congregation is aging, and it's a demographic of older Black women, older Black men that have consistently voted with the Democratic Party. But we are losing adult Black men. Mm-hmm. Those numbers are getting slimmer and slimmer. And we're also losing a lot of young people, right? A lot of young people are trending more independent than they are Democrat. And if we do not shapeshift the way that we speak to these young folks, we're going to really lose a dent in this.
Is it about messaging or policy?
I think it's both. I think a lot of the messaging has been hopeful based and relied heavily on ideology. And for me, and I know for a lot of young people, it's all about the monthlies and it's all about the economy. I do not care as much about the civil rights impacts because I do not feel that in my day-to-day life. Mm-hmm. I just don't. And the Al Sharpton messaging that everybody has relied on, the Jim Clyburn of it all, who are people that have helped pave the way for history. And I think, you forget your history, you're doomed to repeat it, of course. But you have to start talking to young people, young Black people, young Latinos, the same way you do to like regular working class voters. Yeah. I think the messaging just has to marry all together and stop putting people into these buckets.
And also, can I ask you one last question of how is it best to communicate to younger people now in terms of, I'm on a cable news show and they're not watching that. Where do you think they are getting their information, and are you comfortable with it?
Right. The comfortability of it, I hem and haw on that, especially depending on who it is. But I mean, YouTube's huge. Mm-hmm. People are turning into YouTube so much. And
YouTube I would even shows say, or YouTube? Because
I would even say both.
Yeah. I'm surprised at how many people say that they saw me on YouTube. I'm like, well, how did you see me on YouTube? But they'll see like the newsroom or the Five on YouTube. And now I've talked to people here. Now I kind of understand more like how that relationship works.
The clips. It's all, the thing is people love bites.
Shorter clips.
And I mean, they'll sit down and they'll watch like the long Scott Galloway, Pierce Morgan, long form shows. But a lot of news is just straight through clips, TikTok, Instagram Reels. I mean, you're just not going to get people to sit.
Is there anybody in the Democratic Party now you think does that very well? Not yet.
Not top of mind.
Not yet. Well, we'll continue to have a conversation. We'll find out. Yemisi, thank you. Everyone, get to know her. You're a star. And I really, really love getting to know you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Dana.